We now have flesh and blood.
All right, Brodie on Briar at a 9-1 record. Daniel Rutkowski on Phi, a perfect 10, much like yourself, Stephen Cookus.
We all know that's a lie. Thank you for that, though. I appreciate it. Brodie's going to kick us off on the turn 0 play as Briar pushing into a Phi that is unbeaten. Unbeaten on the days and playing in this matchup, not the double Kodachi, but instead playing the Emberblade.
Yeah, and Daniel Rutkowski looking much like Wayne from Letterkenny. Looks great in that shirt, as it looks like Brodie Spurlock also is just comfortable with the hoodie. He's got the sweet glasses on, and he's just doing the first thing, which is tunic. And you'd be surprised how many people forget that bad boy.
You can't forget the tunic. Come on, you gotta get that remembered. Now, he has an interesting starting hand in that he doesn't find immediately like the perfect bomb hand where you can land channel mount heroic and then jam down a bunch of attacks. Instead, he's got a pump in lightning press. He's got is sort of an innocuous attack that in this build, within Briar, you can't necessarily go swarming Gloomveil as easily as something like a Viserai, and so decision points here are a little interesting. Do you try the old turn 0, make a rune chant and pass strategy?
I'm wondering if there's a situation here perhaps where you do attack, which he's doing over here, so 3 go again, and maybe you try to sneak in damage with the lightning press and actually begin the onslaught here and make it happen. I know that Brodie's main objective here, I feel, is just to finish the turn with an arsenal, but if he can sneak through 3 damage, that's fine, and the rune chant popping through. I do not believe there's any AB for Daniel. Doesn't look like it.
Does not believe so, no, and no AB on the side of Brodie as well, and that is exactly right. And I think this is a good play, too, because on turn 0, when you see a lightning press, you don't really want to keep this lightning press in hand for multiple turns. You'd rather just get it out by either just using it for damage, which is the case here, because this is sort of a race scenario when you're playing against a Phi who just wants to race you down.
1 float for Brodie Spurlock. There is a go again on that Swarming Gloomveil off of the fact that an aura was created from the grasp of the Arc Knight. The Lightning Press going on top, but there's going to be a Rosetta Chaser to this whole story as it's going to be a 2-2. And without Arcane Barrier, you got to feel here, Steven, that Brodie's going to be really leaning on maximizing that Rosetta.
Well, he's got to play that non-attack if he wants that arcane damage, and I think the only non-attack in his hand is like a Weave Earth, and so there's the Weave Earth following that Rosetta Thorn. The option there could have been to, keep the Weave Earth if you wanted to arsenal it, but that's not a card you really want to arsenal. It's better to just get it for the 2 and 2 like you mentioned.
I like how this was sequenced. The Weave Earth ahead of the Swarming Gloomveil wasn't going to buff it, so keeping surprises in hand for Brodie, not giving up too much information where it's not necessarily important. Playing the Weave Earth afterwards, the standard, like a casual player may have just, Weave Earth for nothing. We're going to go Swarming Gloomveil, and then I'll Rosetta you. But there's no surprises there. Holding onto a card there means that Daniel might think that maybe there's another attack coming. Maybe there's another block that I might need to make here. So very heads up there for Brodie to keep the information very, very close to the chest.
Yeah, so here we come in with the old 4 attack, pushing the breakpoint and really trying to do Phi things, as it were, because you're going to want to push this damage. You've got the 2 floating if you want to go Emberblade or if you want to play something tricky from your hand. And looking over on Brodie's side of things, he does have what looks to be the start of a couple of very powerful attacks. So do you just want to try and take this and set up a turn where you can go E-Strike Snatch or something to that effect?
Yeah, E-Strike Snatch, looking at the non-attack actions in hand, if there's any in there.
You can even do like a Scar for a Scar into E-Strike, tuck in the card with Go Again into Snatch as well, which is a very powerful hand. So we may just see a full take here, depending on whatever gets sent his way from Brodie.
Again, at the very basics of this game, Steven, a lot of the times when you're trying to just evaluate what the blocks are. If it's just vanilla damage, if there's no on-hit effects that are very detrimental, typically you're evaluating, okay, what's the ceiling that Daniel can present over here? Is it more or less than what I can present? And if so, if it's less, then I'm just going to take it and we're going to trade. I'm already at an advantage. This is a race, like you said.
Yes.
So we're Brodie right now is in a situation where he knows how much damage his hand can output. He needs to understand and kind of have a read on what Daniel can push out on his side.
Yeah, and this is what the basis of fundamentals from the turn cycle perspective means. So turn cycle being how much damage you can present with your 4-card hand, how much damage you think your opponent can present, and how you can go about mitigating that from turn to turn. And who wins the turn cycle is the person that either mitigates more than is presented and then presents back more. And that little dance of I can present this much, can you stop this much, is really where the best Flesh and Blood players make their hay. And here this attack is coming for 5 off of the buff from the Mounting Anger.
What I like is that there's the Mask of Momentum in this case, in a race scenario, does pressure Brodie to actually donate a card, to create some sort of block scenario where Daniel's not peeling a card, drawing a card off the top of his deck here. So giving up the Tome of Harvest there to block the Ember Blade is a smart move. It might have been one of the cards that were relatively expendable for Brodie here. I mean, Tome of Harvest, I think, you know, it's like that Rick and Morty thing. What is my purpose? Yeah, you pitch for Channel Mount Heroic. Oh my God, you know, like that's essentially what it is. In this case, you're throwing it at the Ember Blade, so it's all good.
Yeah, in this matchup, the Tome is not serving just about any purpose that you really need it for here in this scenario. In slower matchups, you can set this up as like a pitch stack scenario where you can see it later and then land like a big turn where you've got all these zeros coming because you drew off of Tome of Harvest. And here we see the Phoenix Flame. It's going to be an equipment block and a Lava Burst to finish things out.
I like how this was done, though, because I think Brodie knew that he was not going to fully block this Lava Burst. So throwing the equipment in front of the Phoenix Flame, again, shuts off the Mask of Momentum. And also, I believe, robs Daniel from an opportunity to actually draw a card for an Arsenal opportunity here.
That's right. Avoiding 5-card hands is huge. You don't want Fi to play into a 5-card hand if you can help it. And stopping Mask of Momentum draws is one way that you stop a 5-card hand, which could lead to just 30 damage turns out of nowhere.
Hey, Brodie, thank you for keeping the decks so, like, look at him. He's just like, all right, got to make sure the piles are neat. Not like Yanji. Yanji's throwing things around like it's the Thunderdome.
And, of course, taking some damage like this allows you to play this Scar for a Scar into, I believe he kept the Snatch as well, which means he's going to threaten his own card draw.
No, great 2-card hand, frankly. Again, for 0 resources, you're allowed to push 8 damage with an on-hit effect. I think with 2 breakpoint attacks, this is great. And this will force Daniel to really respect this Snatch. And it's not because, I don't think you're ever going to... I don't believe that Brodie is thinking about hitting the Snapdragons. We've seen him play yesterday where he hit the Snapdragons and really didn't get anything out of it. However, he is basically saying, I'm either going to eat some equipment here or you're giving me a 5-card hand. This Snatch is basically saying... Give me, it's progress towards a better outcome.
This is his Mask of Momentum force. Just like we saw with Daniel trying to push that 5-card hand advantage himself, this was Brodie's way off of a 2-card hand. And again, a different turn cycle to try and capitalize and create his own 5-card hand and set that up.
Daniel, again, with 4 cards, no Arsenal, did donate the equipment to stop the on-hit from Brodie's Snatch attack. In this case, starting again with the go-agains. That's kind of how you begin things here. It's a 3 go-again, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Rising Resentment coming across and trying to push an on-hit that sometimes doesn't really have much utility because, yes, it can reduce the cost of something that you banish. But when played in this moment, it doesn't hit a ton of things that you really care about because, obviously, if you're hitting with this and triggering the effect, then the effect itself doesn't actually find anything for a discount.
Brodie's got a Command and Conquer, a Weave Earth, I think another Tome of Harvests in there as well. Again, a lot of the stuff that you're pitching for to play the Channel Mount Heroic, just not finding the Channel Mount Heroic. Brodie is going to be running out of time eventually to find one of these key pieces. 3 of them floating around in the deck, and every turn that he draws up, he's hoping to find it, to change the tempo of this game.
Yeah, and you can, if you're playing with these turn cycle ideas in mind, if you can prevent some damage, keep a 2-card hand and do something like a Command and Conquer for 6 if they choose to Arsenal a card and try to play for their own 5-card hand, then you can really flip the tempo in a little bit of a way. So here he blocks the Ember Blade. Again, blocking the second chain link here means that drawing off of Mask of Momentum is a lot more difficult because you have to go 3 chain links of hits.
So we're going to activate Phi here. It's going to cost you 1. Only 2 Draconic chain links. So it's going to cost you 1. And there is the Phoenix Form. Flame Form?
Form Flame.
Form Flame.
Phoenix Form not seeing a ton of play right now, unfortunately.
That's that's the Phoenix Form. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Phoenix Flame, though, is seeing quite a bit of play.
Yes, yes, Phoenix Flame. There it is. All right, that's the one. Okay, so that's the one we're talking about. Phoenix Flame is coming in for 1 attack. Go again. It was picked up out of the graveyard, rescued out of there by the Phi ability. And like you mentioned, blocking that second chain link makes it so much more difficult to go ahead and get the Mask of Momentum. But you could probably assume that if that Mask of Momentum was like a Crown of Providence, Brodie's probably eating a lot more of this damage to push back. So Mask of Momentum is, even if you get no hits off of it, it is still so effective.
Yeah, it fundamentally changes how everybody has to play against you when you're considering Mask of Momentum. And it's not necessarily the mask that everybody plays as Phi, but it is becoming far more popular than it was previous to this because Mask of the Pouncing Lynx with combo Phi was really your ticket. You were playing that down and you were trying to set up this huge turn with like Art of Wars, and then you'd go and fetch like your Lava Burst at the end for 1.5 billion damage. Here, we're threatening card draw, and that is sometimes just as scary.
Mask of Momentum was the first card I ever purchased that was over $100.
Was it really?
First one ever. When I started out, it was on Katsu, and obviously you need that card, and I had more or less everything else, like, minus the Command and Conquerors and whatnot, but I was like, if I'm going to invest in a card, this I feel is the most important piece that I need. I had pulled a Tunic, luckily, but Mask of Momentum was the first card that I ever spent over $1 bill on.
Now, I believe you actually opened a Mask of Momentum at a draft that we played. Didn't you open that card?
I did, and I called it because this was a box that you actually donated. This was at was this U.S. Nationals last year?
This was at last year's Nationals. I
yes,
believe,
it was. So Steven actually supplied a WTR box, and it was a silly draft because there was only 4 of us. So basically, we all had a hero that were going, and. Last pack, somebody opened a Mask of Momentum, but they weren't playing Katsu, and it just wheeled to me. I was like, you fools!
It was so fun. We all had a good time with that one. Taking the 5 from the Enlightened Strike and coming in with that 2, in this case it is a 3-card hand, but threatening the arsenal that was established. This was the play that we were talking about moments ago that could be just advantageous. Yes, you took damage, but here you're pushing 6 and blowing up their arsenal and setting your own.
Yeah, that's such an effective card, especially against a hero that doesn't want to block. Blowing up the arsenal is effectively like almost like a pummel for a card that they really wanted to keep and pocket in there. And it's also coming through for 6. So Brodie now is going to be on the back foot. 3 attack, go again. Ronin Renegade is the play, and Brodie at 24, still comfortable, but still has the Crown of Providence as block ability as well. And still no Channel Mount Heroics, but I think there's one in his hand.
Yeah, the moment you find a Channel Mount Heroic is the moment that, from Brodie's perspective, you really consider taking what you have, but it doesn't look like it's there.
That's a Bramble Spark, a Gorganian Tome, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you really want to consider your options when you don't have one of these in play, because Channel Mount Heroic does allow you to do so much. And instead, he's just going to choose to take this first 3 and then probably follow up perhaps with a block. And Daniel here is just, from his perspective, it's all about pushing damage and trying to get Brodie's life total down so low that he just can't afford to keep a 4-card hand when he finds a Channel Mount Heroic.
Brodie's hand's not bad. I think there's a Scar for a Scar in there as well. Ooh.
Ancestral Empowerment in the reaction step, allowing the card draw here. So going to record that point of damage there.
What a great card that is. Again, iconic for the class. Just +1 to get over those perfect blocks and draw a card on top of it. So 3 is the attack here. Again, the Searing Ember Blade is being represented for 3. It's the second chain link perhaps to connect. Brodie has to respect this one. This is one that you might want to maybe. Are you throwing your Crown of Providence at it with your with the rest of your glove block? If you don't like your arsenal, what's the play here? Are you just donating a card? At some point, Brodie has to be fighting back.
I mean, there is a consideration to be made about using Crown of Providence to try and dig one card further. Because if you can dig one card further and you just so happen to find Channel Mount, then the entire complexion of this game changes.
Brodie really likes his hand here. He's taken the second chain link. He has the embodiment of Earth, so any non-attack action was a clean block for this. But that is a Blaze Headlong. That's going to be 4 go again, as long as you've played another red card. So the third chain link now is threatening Mask of Momentum.
Yeah, this is a dangerous position to be in because right now, sitting at 12, you are in easy lethal range on a 4 or even a 5-card hand. And so now you really want to consider blocking and making sure there is no card draw, because if your opponent sets up a 5-card hand successfully and then just comes at you, they can just knock you out of the park.
And no, there's going to be no surprises on that one because Ancestral Empowerment will not be able to target Blaze Headlong. However, for the record, Daniel Rutkowski is playing 2 red Razor Reflexes.
Oh, that's so fun. That has probably won him multiple games this weekend. Now, I can't speak to if that's the case, but the fact that you're running more than one Razor Reflex is just so perfect. And perhaps that's what Brodie's thinking. He's like, okay, from now until the end of this game, do I need to account for any other attack reactions? I've seen one. I've seen exactly one Ancestral Empowerment for a buff of 1, but hasn't seen any of the Razors.
Think about it this way. I mean, how many times does that Phoenix Flame come in where you're at like 2 or 3 and you're like, all right, like I got to block the next attack, and kablamo, you just get blown up by a Phoenix Flame rocking the Razor Reflex.
Yeah, it is the classic ninja play, winning off of the Razor Reflex. And believe it or not, in my first ever game of Flesh and Blood in October of 2019, in my first ever win, I think, of Flesh and Blood, I picked up the win off of accidentally realizing that my opponent can't add more blocks to a card I razored. I play Razor Reflex, and I said, okay. And he said, oh, I can't add any more blocks. And I said, oh, you're dead. It was great. It was a great moment.
Ooh, you're dead.
And then I lost the next, 4 games. But that first one, that was the one I remember.
I think my best Razor Reflex moment is double Razor Reflexing a Kodachi to blow up a Phantasmal Footsteps. That was it. I was like, let's just do it. Why not?
That's pretty fun. So here the Gorganian Tome draws him a card. Let's see what he drew into. 3-card hand, still digging for those channels. Channel Mount Heroic does exist somewhere.
Yeah, but it's turning into Channel Mount Where Are You? Because frankly, it's been, it's got these cement shoes just the bottom of that deck. It's just sitting there. Where is it? Brodie's running out of time here again. It's not necessarily about the game clock. It's about your life total. And for 2 heroes that just wheel and deal it and toss it around like it's nothing, Brodie Spurlock eventually is going to have to pay the Reaper here because he's at 11. And 11 is, like 3 cards for a 5 player.
Yeah, it is. It's a dangerous position to be in because you haven't found your power card, and that is a little bit of the volatility of the Briar deck. When you find the old Channel Mount Heroic, things are looking up. But until you do, you have to play this dangerous game of, just playing a bunch of 4s.
Okay, so we're going to go in So Tomorrow and pick up the Tome of Harvest. Now, So Tomorrow out of Arsenal allows you to draw a card as well. So further digging, which is what you want to do here. And putting the Tome of Harvests, I believe it goes to the bottom of the deck, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it actually tucks it to the top, but it's been a minute since I've read the old So Tomorrow. Nevertheless, because he's played 2 non-attacks, he's setting himself up with the Embodiment of Lightning, which can be huge if you've got a string of attacks that you want to push.
Embodiment of Lightning, again, is going to give the next attack go again. Should 2 non-attack actions be played, that's Briar's ability. She'll create the Embodiment of Lightning. So what will Brodie play here? Now, what do we see in hand? A Swarming Gloomveil. That's already got go again, based off of the creation of the aura. You've got a Scar for a Scar. That's already got go again. It's really the Lightning Surge that is going to get the best value off of that Embodiment of Lightning. The question is, that's probably the first card to be played, unless Brodie is looking more so that he wants to just tuck that into Arsenal and look for a bigger turn. But you see Brodie here doing a lot of that math. And again, a lot of it, you see players do this a lot. Stephen, I do it is when an attack is presented, I'm basically playing my turn out with my cards face down. I'm like, okay, this goes here. I'm going to pitch this. This gets played. So what do I have left to block? And in this case, Brodie's also doing the math to make sure that he's really maximizing what this turn is going to look like.
Yeah. It's a tough position to be in as well, because what you would love to have is life parity so that you could force cards out of Fi's hand, but you don't have that. You are down by a pretty wide margin, and so anything you're going to present here, and unfortunately using the Scar for Scar will end up popping that embodiment of lightning, but anything you present is essentially just going to be eaten with, no real repercussions on Daniel's side of things.
So that the Scar for Scar hitting creates the embodiment of Earth, which then is another aura which Gloomveil is looking at.
Yep.
And he is going to opt to put the Lightning Surge in the pocket here, perhaps thinking that, well, if all this damage gets taken by Daniel, maybe the Scar for Scar won't occur. But I think that based off all the damage, I think the lowest that Daniel will go down to is 12, right? So
yep.
In this case, Brodie is now, again, on the back foot as Daniel essentially just tanked all that damage, and you could probably suspect that the Reckoning's coming.
Yeah, he's got a 5-card hand. He's got his opponent at 11. He's sitting at 10-0, smelling blood in the water, and he wants to get to 11-0. So how does he try and close it out on this turn? Because a 5-card hand for Fi can represent, well, just an insane amount of damage.
There's a Sigil of Suffering in Brodie's hand here as well, which is, again, what do we call that?
Great source of unintentional offense, and it would be fantastic if he had his opponent to 1. Unfortunately, he does not.
I have won a game that way, and it was the best feeling in the world.
Did
Not
you
for
really?
me, absolutely. It was the first Pro Quest ever in Canada, and it was my win and in for top 8, and I knew I had one in the deck. My opponent was at 1, and I knew that they were just going to blow me out of the water, but I drew it because I was down to my last few cards, and I was like, this is going to feel so bad for them.
Coming in with Flame Call Awakening. Flame Call Awakening does, I believe, trigger its effect because you've played the first red card, which was that brand with Cinderclaw, allow you to go and search your deck for that Phoenix Flame, give it a good old shuffle, and that's going to basically mean that now we're not playing with a 5-card hand. We're playing with a 6-card hand, and that's not even counting the Phoenix Flame in the graveyard already.
Now, credit to Brodie here. I don't think Brodie is really giving any love anymore to that Tunic. I think that the game is not going to go an extra 3 turns to get value, so that might be thrown in front of this Phoenix Flame. You also have the Crown of Providence if necessary. Brodie might be using that, obviously to help tank damage. There's 3 more instances of block available from his equipment pieces in order to keep him afloat here, but also the fact that you're cycling a card. You're basically hitting a sink below, as it were, off of one of the cards in your arsenal or your hand to help find it. But again, the tail of the tape here, Stephen, is if Brodie found a Channel Mount Heroic a turn or 2 ago, this would have been a completely different game.
Yeah, this is definitely the case, and this is where we want to really consider throwing the kitchen sink at all of these cards at this point, because if you can, and this is something you can do too, you can choose to block with Crown of Providence, sink the Arsenal card if it's not something super impactful, and then have a 5-card hand to block with just to try and stay alive. But this is a clean block here of the Sigil of Suffering, dealing 1 point of damage and blocking 4.
What a great defense reaction, and we have not seen the Razor Reflex, if it's even in this, if it even made the cut from the sideboard.
That's true, yeah.
Blocking out the 3rd chain link here is also very, very key.
Yeah, at this point, you just can't let a card draw happen. If you do, you probably lose the game.
A matchup of Titans here. Daniel Rutkowski, 10-0 on Fi. Brodie Spurlock. Kid Wonderful, 9-1 on Briar. 5 life, 11 life for Daniel Rutkowski, but this can vanish in a heartbeat. These are both very aggressive heroes. It's basically crunch time now, as both players are going to be starting to donate their hand to stay in the game. We saw it early on, Stephen. It didn't matter. Just send me the bill. I'll sign for it. Let me just play my cards. And now we're at that place where you actually have to answer the bell.
And it's a tough spot from Brodie's perspective, because you're down life total. You know you're going to be threatened by at least 2 more cards, most likely, because you've got the the Phi trigger that's going to go fetch the Phoenix Flame, plus you have a 2-card hand for your opponent, so there's at least something else coming down the pipeline, maybe 2 something else's. So you want to keep a hand that allows you to maybe push your own lethal, but you're in a spot where you probably can't conceivably keep that hand open. So here comes the Phoenix Flame that was fetched from the graveyard.
I still don't know what's in Daniel Rutkowski's hand. We know there's a Phoenix Flame in there that he got from Flamecall Awakening, but we do not know what that second card is.
That's right.
Imagine it's a Razor, but there's nothing to pitch. There's no pitch available. So again, it's going to be an ineffective Razor, because even if Brodie lets this Phoenix form leak, that Razor's not ending the game.
No,
so
it puts him to 1, and he would probably be okay with that, actually, because he'd be keeping a 3-card hand and an arsenal. And he's going to take the 1 here. The real question is the follow-up, is what comes next? Is it another Phoenix Flame, or is it Phoenix Flame being pitched? It's an Enlightened Strike, and he's going to choose 7.
Okay, we got equipment here that we can throw in front of this. Worst case scenario, it is a 7 attack, which is gigantic. Now, let's talk silver lining here. 7's a massive order to digest. But what's the silver lining here? You've got 2 pieces of equipment, and your opponent just gave up their arsenal.
Yes. The issue is your equipment, unfortunately, doesn't just keep you alive by itself. Like if you had 2/2 blocks on your equipment, you could actually just throw that, go to 1, and keep your hand. But you're having to block with all your equipment that can block and donate a card just to not die. And that's unfortunate, because you don't go into a hand where you have 2-card hand plus an arsenal. So here maybe you just block with 1 card and possibly the equipment as well.
Is that another Sigil of Suffering in his hand? I could be wrong.
He's got a Ravenous Rabble and a Sonata Arcanix, which is maybe the card that he chooses to block with here, the Sonata Arcanix, but it could just be some equipment plus that Sonata as well.
This is tough, because the Sonata Arcanix is a very good card in conjunction with something like Ravenous Rabble. You'll be able to, perhaps if you hit it spot on, you'll be able to go ahead and draw another attack, which could help you out on, to follow up the Ravenous Rabble. But this 7 is almost like the perfect recipe here for Daniel Rutkowski.
Yeah, it's a fantastic play to represent 7 damage, and you could see he set this up throughout the turn with the cards that he drew into, and choosing to keep the Enlightened Strike and, tucking the card, which was that Phoenix Flame that he fetched, which is, fun to see that. He fetches the Phoenix Flame, uses it not for its attack value of just being a 1 attack that could maybe threaten Mask, but instead as fodder for the 7 attack to allow you to basically push a really uncomfortable lethal here and force this block to happen.
Okay, so in the arsenal for Brodie is the Lightning Surge. So there's a 4 go again no matter what. But the turn is relatively punchless. Again, silver lining for Brodie is that he's playing without with Daniel not having an arsenal. So it's going to be a little less scary.
Now, he did choose to sink the Ravenous Rabble, and I think I noticed that he drew into a So Tomorrow, which unfortunately isn't going to provide a lot of benefit if that is a So Tomorrow. Now, if I missaw it, it was a flash, but we'll see here in a moment what that ends up being. It might be a Bramble Spark as well.
I believe it was a Bramble Spark. I could be wrong as well. We'll find out in just a moment here.
Nevertheless, you were hoping to draw into, maybe perhaps another 4 attack, like a guarantee. No, it was a Force of Nature, so he's going to just use that. Oh, and look at this. He's going to just push Rosetta Thorn alongside of 1 Rune Chant. So keeping the Lightning Surge in hopes that he can survive, maybe put something together like a string of 4 attacks. But that is a dangerous hope.
Yeah.
Too.
Brodie is getting pushed to the limits here. A Phoenix Flame or 2 is going to basically perhaps just end the game here. We're gonna open with a 3 attack, and what for Brodie here, not having an embodiment of Earth can be a very, very, very difficult position to be in, because he's been benefiting off that embodiment of Earth to like send a Nimbleism at this and get the beef up, or send a Bramble Spark and get the beef up.
And look, this is the hand he was looking for 5 turns ago. It's an Earth card that pitches for blue in the form of Autumn's Touch. And it's that Channel Mount Heroic that you combine with it, you pair with it. And an E-Strike, it could have been a huge turn, but these are basically just going to be donated to the attack.
3 again. This is the Searing Ember Blade. There's the Channel Mount Heroic. Daniel Rutkowski saying, "Oh, there they are."
Yes, both players say, "Oh, there they are."
Yeah, whenever
they do exist.
They do exist.
He does exist.
Are we talking about the M&M's Christmas commercial?
Oh, definitely. They play it every year.
They got a lot of mileage off that, didn't they?
Right. Totally they did.
3 blocks all the way around. At least Brodie Spurlock has the right numbers where necessary, but I believe this is merely a matter of time. And honestly, if you were to give Brodie some advice in this situation, what would you say?
Well, oh wow. I would say at this point, win, lose, or draw, you just got to move past this game. And this is true for both players. You got to move past this game, finish it out, figure out how this is all going to play out. It's going to be a snatch for 4, and that's going to do it. You know what? At the very least, you are still a respectable 9-2. Daniel Rutkowski, he should go celebrate. He should go buy some nice cookies, like a snickerdoodle cookie. Just go buy some of that. Celebrate his 11-0 record. Absolutely fantastic.
Hold on.
Play by him.
I would give that a rating. It would be a